Most games from 2017 are completely forgotten by now, and to be honest, that is a pretty normal trajectory for this industry. A studio ships something, supports it for a year or two, if it does well, and then tends to move on to whatever is next. Of course, this is not always the case. Oxygen, not included, for example, never really followed that pattern. It has been getting major DLC releases, substantial content updates, and many quality of life features for years on end, with entirely new worlds and creatures, and also new mechanics still arriving, and the player count does properly reflect that. So this video tells you everything you need to know, what the game actually is, who the game is for, what has changed since launch, and why this game is still very much alive and kicking. If you already know the basics, then you know the deal. You manage a colony of small people called duplicants on an underground asteroid, and the game simulates gases, liquids, and temperature in a way almost no other colony game attempts. Carbon dioxide sinks to the bottom of your base, while hydrogen floats up. Heat builds up and spreads through walls, and your dupes are, to be fair, not particularly smart. You will accidentally kill them in creative and embarrassing ways, and most of the time it will be entirely your own fault, which is sort of the whole point. What ultimately makes the game very different from other colony games is that the simulation is detailed enough that you can trace the exact chain of bad decisions that led to someone dying. So you're not playing as much against random events, most of the time, as you are playing against yourself. Of course, the gorgeous art style here helps the game stand out as well. Now, what has actually changed since launch? Because a lot has. The base game received a significant amount of polish over the years. Germs and disease used to be genuinely terrifying. You could lose an entire run from digging into a slime pocket at the wrong time. But that has been toned down to a manageable annoyance, instead of being a straight up run ender. Deodorizers used to run completely free, but now they need power, which turned the gas management into a real resource decision. The path finding has also been massively improved, multiple times as well. The schedule system now supports multi-cycle schedules, and your dupes are also noticeably better at picking up new tasks. You don't see them wandering around aimlessly as often. There are tons of these quality and quality of life improvements, so even if individually they may sound like small things, if you played this at launch and come back now, then the game will feel noticeably cleaner. The bigger story is the DLCs though, and there are so many of them at this point. Let's take a look at the substantial ones. Spaced Out changed the structure of the whole game. Instead of one large asteroid, you start small and expand to other planetoids in the same cluster, each with different resources, turning the whole thing into what is basically a logistical network of colonies that depend on each other. The Frosty planet pack added a cold starting world, with its own creatures and resources, and to be honest, it's a good example of how Clay adds systems that feel more like natural extensions of what was already there. In some games, the DLCs feel more like disconnected content. This is not the case in this game. The Bionic booster pack added a meaningfully different kind of dupe, with their own skill tree, immunity to certain hazards, and if I'm right, the ability to operate machinery remotely from across the planetoid, which also genuinely changes how you think about late game base design. The Prehistoric planet pack is probably the most dramatic shift. You are on a world with massive dinosaur-like creatures, and there is an impactor asteroid on a collision course with your world that you have to build a defense station to destroy it before it hits. Then the Aquatic planet pack took things in a completely different direction once again, letting your dupes swim for the first time, dropping them into a partially flooded world, and introducing rubber as a new material that is needed to survive the wet environment. On top of all this DLC content, the free quality of life updates have kept coming as well. New buildings, performance improvements, new critter morphs across multiple DLCs, and a hidden code unlock system for a new bioprinter building, and of course various user interface improvements that make the late game especially considerably less painful to manage. The game keeps getting wider. That is not something that many studios bother doing this far into a game's lifespan. If you like games where systems interact in complicated ways, and you do genuinely enjoy figuring out why something broke, then this is probably your thing. To be fair though, if you want something to play casually, without thinking too hard, then this game, despite its cozy art style, is probably not the right fit. The early game is accessible enough, but the game will eventually ask you to understand things like thermodynamics, and it is not being casual about that. The reason no oxygen included refuses to go away is honestly pretty simple. Clay has never stopped working on it. The simulation at the core is unusual, that no other game has really replaced it, and the depth means people are still discovering things years, still building strange automated systems, still finding interactions that nobody has documented, and still posting bases that look completely incomprehensible to anyone who has not played it, but they do look like genuine engineering to anyone who has.